For today's recipe, my friends at California Walnuts and Florida Grapefruit have challenged me to come up with a new delicious recipe, and I have got the most incredible muscovado sponge loaf cake flavored with Florida grapefruit and topped with crunchy California walnuts that are soaked in Florida grapefruit juice. It's going to be a good one. Okay, right, so let's make this cake. Now, I really love Victoria sponge cake. I mean, everyone has made them, haven't they? But it's when you start to add new flavors and sort of slightly different ways of doing it. But the actual methodology is always the same. So I've got 250 grams of lovely brown sugar there, like almost the darker the better, because you're going to get that really lovely treacly flavor. Now, in our house, my wife's just been diagnosed with an allergy to milk, so I've started exploring sort of plant-based butters and seeing what I can do with them. So I've got 250 grams of butter. It's a plant-based one that I'm using today, so if you're dairy-free, it's good for you. If it's not, you can use normal butter, but whatever you like. So it's just 250 grams of butter, and then we're going to start to mix them together. So it's really important that you amalgamate the sugar and the fat together so that they become one homogeneous texture. And that's the first objective when making a good Victoria sponge cake. Okay? You've got that sort of granular sugar that's scratchy, and it just needs working in to the into the butter, and before you add the eggs. Now, if Emily was here, she'd be poo-pooing my methodology, because she chucks everything into the bowl and that's it. Whereas I have a more sort of disciplined approach to a Victoria sponge. I spent, how many months? 2 lots of 3 months with Mitch Turner telling me how a Victoria sponge cake should be made. And I think it's rubbed off on me, bless her. So just keep working that mixer. So now you can sort of, can you see that, Carlos? We've got that kind of one texture now, and I can't hear that scratching sound, which is what I want. And now, and only now, can we start adding the eggs. One at a time. We want 4 eggs. What I'll do is I'll ask Carlos to put the ingredient list down the side. So if you want the recipe, you can just pause the screen, grab that, and then follow me, and you'll be able to get the recipe, or go to petersidwell.com and I'll post it there for you. Okay? So work the first egg in, all right? There we go. Now, and only now, can we add the second egg. In it goes. Really important, room temperature. The eggs are far more elasticated when they're at room temperature than when they're in the fridge. So for all my friends in America that keep their eggs in the fridge, get them out. At least an hour before you're going to cook it. Or make it, should I say. Third egg. Did you keep your eggs in the fridge?
No anymore.
No.
But I remember.
Does that mean, is that your way of saying that you've been listening to me?
Yeah, sometimes. But no, I remember in my home in Spain, the eggs were always in the fridge. Then, yeah, no anymore.
Final egg. In we go. Right, that's our eggs. And our job now is to incorporate those and create a new homogeneous texture. So when I say homogeneous, I mean like one texture that will allow the next ingredient to incorporate in. Okay? Okay, so we're good. We're going to add a little bit of vanilla just to give a sort of a rounded depth to it. But we're going to get a really caramelly flavour from the sugars that we've used. And then I need my zester. I found my zester. The problem with having a big kitchen is you tend to lose things and they're never to hand. So you have to go off looking for them. So
you make yourselves.
Yeah, I do always get my steps in. Right, Florida grapefruit. I've done this recipe now because Florida grapefruit in the UK is in the supermarkets now. So get in there and buy them. They are absolutely delicious. They're fragrant, they're delicious, super good for you, contribute to all-round health, but they add great flavour. So we're just going to zest in a couple of grapefruits, a couple of Florida grapefruits, get the zest in, and then the juice, we're going to soak the California walnuts in the juice so that they take that flavour on and they don't burn while they're in the oven. So there is grapefruit number 1, grapefruit number 2. So walnuts and grapefruit as a flavour combination work really well. And what I wanted to do was then make a cake, that rich, treacly, muscovado-y type sort of cake that would work really well for this time of year. So February, a little bit dark, a little bit cold still. So there we go, we've got the fragrance of the zest of the Florida grapefruits in our cake. Finally, 250 grams of self-raising flour, in it goes. There we go. And let's just slow speed, bring it together. Don't put it on a high speed. We don't want to develop the gluten that's in the flour. That's not what we want to do for this one. Okay. Just going to add a little bit of water to this just to loosen the mixture. If you were using traditional butter in there, you could add a touch of milk. I've gone for a plant-based butter today, so just adding a little bit of water. That's just going to loosen the mix out and allow it to sort of settle so that it can then bake and rise. There we go. Right, let's get rid of that. Give those a shake. Now remember, if you've got any questions about today's recipes, please post them in the comments below. I am here to help you with any of your culinary questions. Right, got a loaf tin. I'm actually just going to line it. I've got a non-stick tin here, but I'm going to line it just to be on the safe side because I don't want any of the sweetness of the walnuts and the Florida grapefruit to sort of stick to the sides when it's baking. So, little tip for you, if you're going to line a loaf tin, just screw your parchment paper up and then just unravel it and pop it in. I can't be bothered to make all those cuts and folds to make it fit. It's just unnecessary for me. And then in we go. So let's get our sponge in. You could make this, Carlos, on one of your daddy-daughter days.
I know.
Daddy daycare day. What do you call it? Babysitting, don't you?
Yeah.
He got in so much trouble for calling it babysitting.
Language barrier.
I bet you only said that once, didn't you?
No. I say a few times, unfortunately.
Oh, right, so in with our sponge and then just use the back of your spoon and just push the sponge in. Okay? That's it. You can always lick the spoon. Yum. Oh, yeah. Right, give it a little tap and then just put it to one side. Now, we haven't got a lot of time because that is now going to start to prove and start to rise because you've added all the acidity and the baking powder and the self-raising flour. It's going to start to work. So we need to be quick. Right. California walnuts. For me, I've been working with California walnuts for quite a few years now and they are delicious. They are really, really good for you, good for heart health, great to work with Florida grapefruit. Just an all-round great combination. So let's just chop our walnuts roughly. You don't need to chop them down to sort of like flour, just a rough chop. Okay, that will do. And then grab a bowl, get your walnuts into that bowl. Let's just get all that little bit of dust there. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take our Florida grapefruits that have now been zested and cut through. I mean, just, oh, they're so fragrant and lovely. We were drinking them the other day on our camera, weren't we, Carlos?
Yeah, we did.
So squeeze your Florida grapefruit over the walnuts, yeah? Turn it inside out. Get every last little bit of juice you can out of that fruit.
This is a trick I really use at the
Yeah,
moment.
yeah.
When I do with limes and I always remember to turn them around.
Yeah, yeah, and especially this time of year. I mean, Florida grapefruits, they're banging season. They've had all last summer and autumn to sort of ripen and sweeten and all that lovely Florida sun. And you can taste it. Let's get the other one. There you go. You can have a little suck on that, Carlos.
Thank you.
And I will finish. So we've got 1.5 grapefruits in there. Turn it inside out. Get every last little bit. Okay. And then what you need to do is leave that for a couple of minutes just to sort of soak. Just have a wipe down, have a clear up. Get your oven preheated, 170 degrees. And when we're ready to go, they're going to absorb a lot of the mixture. And look at that. I mean, it doesn't look massively appetizing right now, I'll give you that. But what it's done is the Florida grapefruit juice has soaked into the walnuts so that they're not dry. Because obviously, and if you just put a walnut straight at the top of your cake, it's going to burn, okay? Whereas now, it's not going to burn because it's been hydrated and it's slightly soft, but it's got that lovely tang from the Florida grapefruit now. And it's just going to sit on there and kind of candy and bake. And then we're going to keep that last little bit of juice because I'm going to pour that onto the cake once it's baked. So I've preheated my oven, 170 degrees. It's going to take about 30 to 35 minutes to bake. Once it's fully baked all the way through, it is ready to enjoy. Right, here's one I made earlier. So I've got that one baking in the oven now. I've got this one. This was our test bake, just to make sure it was all good. Now, I've got half a grapefruit left. Seemed like a good idea for me just to squeeze that last little bit of lovely Florida grapefruit juice on top of this cake while it's still lukewarm and it's absorbent and it's going to soak up flavors. Just give it a little squeeze. Don't go mad because you don't want it to be soggy. But that extra fragrance and hit of flavor from the Florida grapefruit on top of our California walnuts with a beautiful Demerara sponge cake is going to be lovely, if you ask me. Now, don't forget, if you want the recipe, go to petersidwell.com. You will find it there. Also, check out California walnuts, check out Florida grapefruit on all the social medias. There's tons of recipes that we've created for them. So check those ones out. But before we do that, let's have a little look at our cake. You ready for a bit of cake, Carlos?
You know I'm always ready for cake.
There we go. So look at that. You've got that lovely... Can you see that, Carlos? Which camera? So point it to that one.
Yeah, all that's perfect.
There we go. Smells amazing. It really, really does. It's got that lovely fragrant hit from the Florida grapefruit, but it's also got that lovely crunch. Here you go, Carlos.
Thank you.
Get your lips around that. Good cake. Go bake this cake. It's delicious. Thank you very much for watching. See you in the next episode.